I never imagined that I would be the victim of a stalker. I always thought those kinds of things happened to other people, not me, but that all changed when I met him. It was a warm summer evening, and I was walking home from work. I noticed a man following me, but I didn't think much of it at first. I figured he was just heading in the same direction as me, but as I turned down my street, he kept following me. I quickened my pace, hoping to shake him off, but he matched my speed. I started to feel uneasy, but I tried to convince myself that I was being paranoid. That was until he spoke. "Hello there," he said, his voice low and raspy. "You look like a nice girl. What's your name?" I didn't answer. I just kept walking, hoping that he would take the hint and leave me alone. But he didn't. He continued to follow me and ask me questions, getting closer and closer with each step. I finally reached my front door and fumbled with my keys, trying to get inside as quickly as possible. But before I could open the door, he grabbed my arm and pulled me back. "I just want to talk to you," he said, his grip tightening. "Why are you in such a hurry?" I struggled to break free, but his grip was too strong. I was trapped. That's when I realized that I was dealing with something much more sinister than just a random stranger. This man was a stalker, and I was his prey. After that first encounter with the stalker, I was filled with fear. Every time I left my house, I was constantly looking over my shoulder, wondering if he was following me. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, even when I was alone. I tried to convince myself that it was just my imagination, but I couldn't ignore the feeling that something was off. Every time I heard a noise outside, I would jump and my heart would race. I started to feel like I was losing my mind. One day, I decided to take a different route home from work, hoping to throw him off my trail. I walked quickly, trying to blend in with the other pedestrians on the busy streets. But as I turned down a quiet street, I saw him standing there watching me. My heart started racing, and I felt a knot form in my stomach. How did he find me? Was he always watching me? I tried to keep my composure and keep walking, but he started following me again. I tried to quicken my pace, but he kept up with me. I was too scared to look back, but I could feel him getting closer and closer. Finally, he spoke. "You can't run from me," he said, his voice so terrifying. "I'll always find you." I didn't know what to do. I was too scared to confront him, but I couldn't keep running forever. I decided to take a chance and turned around to face him. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, my voice shaking. He just laughed, a cold and cruel sound. "Why not? You're such a pretty little thing. I just can't help myself." I felt sick to my stomach. This man was sick and twisted, and I was his victim. I turned and ran the rest of the way home, not daring to look back. When I got inside, I locked all the doors and windows, but I knew deep down that it wouldn't be enough to keep him out. From that moment on, I was consumed by fear. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, and I couldn't focus on anything else. My stalker had taken over my life, and I didn't know how to make it stop. Every day, I would see him watching me. He would follow me to work, to the grocery store, to the park. I tried to ignore him, but I couldn't escape the feeling of being constantly watched. I knew that I had to do something before it was too late, but I didn't know where to turn. The police told me that there was nothing they could do until he actually did something illegal. I felt completely alone and helpless. The fear never went away. It followed me everywhere I went. a constant reminder that I was being watched and stalked. I didn't know how much longer I could take it. As the days passed, my stalker became more and more aggressive. He started to send me emails, text messages, and voicemails, all filled with disturbing and inappropriate content. He would tell me how he was watching me, how he knew everything about me, and how he knew everything about me, and how he couldn't wait to be with me. I felt violated and terrified. It was like he was always right beside me, even when he wasn't physically there. I couldn't escape his presence, and it was driving me insane. One night, as I was getting ready for bed, I heard a noise outside my window. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. I slowly crept towards the window and peered outside. There he was, my stalker, staring up at me with a sick grin on his face. I screamed and stumbled backwards, tripping over a pile of laundry on the floor. By the time I got up, he was gone. I knew that I had to do something before it was too late. I started to carry pepper spray with me everywhere I went, and I installed security cameras around my home. I even hired a private investigator to try and track him down, but he always seemed to be one step ahead of us. The stalker's advances became more frequent and more brazen. He would call me at all hours of the day and night, breathing heavily into the phone. He would send me packages filled with creepy notes and pictures of myself that he had clearly taken without my knowledge. I felt like I was losing my mind. Every time the phone rang or I received a package, I would jump out of my skin. I stopped going out, stopped seeing my friends, stopped living my life. My stalker had taken everything from me. One night, as I was walking home from work, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around, and there he was, walking towards me with a sinister grin on his face. I reached for my pepper spray, but he was too fast. He grabbed me from behind and held me tight. "Let me go!" I screamed, thrashing around in his grip. "Shh, shh, it's okay," he whispered in my ear. "I just want to talk." I could feel his hot breath on my neck, and I felt sick. I struggled harder, trying to break free, but he was too strong. "Please," he said, his voice pleading. "Just give me a chance." I knew that I had to get away from him before it was too late. With all the strength I could muster, I kicked him as hard as I could and broke free. I ran the rest of the way home, not daring to look back. I collapsed onto my bed, tears streaming down my face. I didn't know how much longer I could take this. I was at the end of my rope, and I didn't know what to do. After the incident on the street, I knew I had to do something. I couldn't keep living in fear like this. So I made the decision to go to the police. I brought all the evidence I had collected, the emails, the voicemails, the notes, the pictures. The officer who took my report listened intently, nodding and taking notes. He assured me that they would do everything in their power to catch my stalker. Over the next few weeks, I met with different detectives, answering questions and providing any additional information that I could. They seemed genuinely concerned and dedicated to finding the stalker, which gave me a small glimmer of hope. But as time went on and nothing seemed to come of their investigation, that hope dwindled. I started to feel like I was on my own again, like no one could protect me from this man who had become my personal nightmare. Then one day, I received a phone call from one of the detectives working on my case. He asked me to come down to the station to look at some photos they had collected. I felt a surge of adrenaline and fear as I agreed to go. When I arrived at the station, the detective showed me a series of photos, each one a picture of a man who could have been my stalker. My heart raced as I tried to identify him, but none of the photos seemed quite right. Just when I was about to give up hope, the detective handed me one last photo. It was of a man I had never seen before, but something about his eyes sent a shiver down my spine. I knew, without a doubt, that he was the one who had been stalking me. The detective told me that they were still investigating, and that they had a few leads, but they needed my help. They asked me if I had seen or heard anything that might help them narrow down the suspect pool. I told them everything I could remember, but it didn't seem like enough. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months, but the detectives still hadn't made any progress in the case. The fear and paranoia I had been living with were starting to take a toll on me. I was constantly looking over my shoulder, afraid that I was being watched or followed. One night, as I was getting ready for bed, I heard a noise outside my window. My heart started pounding in my chest as I tiptoed over to the window and peeked outside. I couldn't see anything, but the feeling of being watched was stronger than ever. That's when I noticed a small piece of paper on my windowsill. I hesitated for a moment before picking it up, fearing it could be a trap or a trick. But my curiosity got the best of me, and I opened the note. "Sorry for scaring you. I just wanted to see you. You're so beautiful when you sleep." I felt sick to my stomach as I realized that my stalker had been watching me through my window. He knew where I lived and could easily access my room at any time. The thought of him being that close to me was enough to make me want to run away and never look back. I called the police immediately, but they still hadn't made any progress on the case. They assured me that they were doing everything they could, but it didn't feel like enough. I knew that I had to take matters into my own hands if I wanted to stay safe. After the incident with the note on my windowsill, I knew I couldn't rely solely on the police to keep me safe. I needed to take action and learn how to defend myself. I enrolled in self-defense classes and started carrying pepper spray with me everywhere I went. I was determined to not let my stalker win and to show him that I wasn't going to be an easy target. The self-defense classes were intense and physically demanding, but I pushed myself to keep going. The instructors taught us how to defend ourselves against different types of attacks, and I practiced tirelessly until I felt confident in my abilities. However, my newfound confidence was short-lived. One night, as I was walking home from the grocery store, I felt someone grab me from behind. Instinctively, I sprayed my pepper spray in the direction of my attacker and heard him scream in pain. I turned around to see my stalker, clutching his eyes and writhing in agony. But instead of running away, he started laughing. His laughter was chilling, and I knew that I was dealing with a dangerous and unstable person. I realized that I couldn't let my guard down even for a second, and that I needed to be prepared for anything. The incident shook me to my core, but it also made me more determined than ever to protect myself. I started taking different routes home and varied my routine to throw my stalker off my trail. I even started carrying a small pocket knife with me, just in case. Despite my best efforts, my stalker continued to find ways to torment me. He would send me creepy messages and leave disturbing gifts on my doorstep. I knew that I was in a constant state of danger and that I couldn't let my guard down. But I refused to let my stalker control my life. I continued to go to work see my friends, and live my life as best as I could. Even though I was living in constant fear, I refused to let him win. One night, as I was coming home from work, I saw something that made my blood run cold. My stalker was waiting for me outside my apartment building. I froze in fear, unsure of what to do. I considered running back to my office or finding a public place to hide, but I knew that he would eventually catch up with me. So I took a deep breath and walked towards him, trying to appear as confident as possible. He had a smug grin on his face as he approached me, and I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. He grabbed my arm roughly and pulled me towards him, whispering in my ear that he had a surprise for me. I tried to pull away, but he was too strong. He dragged me towards a nearby alleyway, and I could feel my pulse racing as we entered the dark and narrow space. It was then that I saw what he had in store for me. He had set up a small room in the alleyway, complete with a mattress, a chair, and a small table. It was clear that he had been planning this for a long time. I tried to scream, but he covered my mouth with his hand. He told me that he wanted me to stay with him, that we could be together forever. I could see the madness in his eyes, and I knew that I had to get out of there before it was too late. I tried to think of a way to escape, but the room was too small and he was too strong. I felt trapped and helpless with no way out. But then I remembered the self-defense classes I had taken. I mustered up all my strength and kicked him hard in the knee. He stumbled backwards in pain, and I took the opportunity to run out of the room as fast as I could. I ran as fast as my legs could carry me, not looking back until I was a safe distance away. I could hear him shouting after me, but I didn't stop until I was back in my apartment building, panting and sweating from the adrenaline. I knew that I had narrowly escaped a potentially deadly situation. But I also knew that my stalker wouldn't give up that easily. I had to find a way to get rid of him for good. After the incident in the alleyway, I knew that I couldn't keep living my life in fear. I had to take matters into my own hands if I wanted to get rid of my stalker for good. I started by changing all of my contact information. I also invested in a high-quality security system for my apartment and made sure to always carry pepper spray with me. But even with all of these precautions, I still could feel that he was always watching me, waiting for the right moment to strike. One day, as I was leaving my apartment, I saw him standing across the street, watching me with that same smug grin on his face. I felt a wave of terror wash over me, but I also felt something else. Anger. I had had enough of living in fear, enough of being his victim. So I crossed the street and confronted him, telling him in no uncertain terms that I was done with his games and that he needed to leave me alone. He laughed in my face, telling me that I would never be able to get rid of him, but I stood my ground, staring him down until he finally turned and walked away. From that day on, I never saw him again. I don't know if he finally got the message or if he just moved on to another victim, but I felt a sense of relief knowing that he was no longer a part of my life. Years have passed since that terrifying time in my life, and I have moved on, building a new life for myself that is free from fear and anxiety. But I will never forget the lessons I learned from my experience. I learned that I am stronger than I ever thought possible, that I have the power to stand up for myself and protect myself from harm. And most importantly, I learned that I am not alone. There are people out there who will help and support me when I need it the most, whether it's friends, family, or the police. I hope that my story can serve as a reminder to others who may be going through something similar. You are not alone, and you have the strength to overcome even the most terrifying of circumstances.